Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Victory Monday edition of Birds 365. Our first Victory Monday of the year, Johnny Mac, because we haven't had any Sunday games. Eagles skate by and get a win over the New Orleans Saints, 15-12, and move to 2-1 on the year. That's John McMullen, the number one Eagles beat reporter in town. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Please give us follows on Twitter. I launched a new Twitter, Johnny Mac, to chronicle my work here covering this team alongside
a new
my work.
Twitter. What do you have? 2 Twitters?
Yeah. I had a personal one, so I just wanted to make one that's dedicated to my work covering the team. So give me a follow over there at Real Zander and give Johnny Mac a follow at JF McMullen. So good stuff there. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday morning, man? A big Victory Monday.
Yeah. Overreaction Monday. Let's see if we get any overreactions. I'm sure we will, but it's better to have overreactions when it's Victory Monday as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Yep, no doubt. Look, John, we'll get into the game here in the beginning. We'll have Jeff Kerr coming up. So a great show planned for you guys. I want to thank BetUS, by the way, for sponsoring our show today. So thanks to the good people at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa for all of your betting needs. Johnny Mac, my big takeaway, man, now that I'm a day removed, I did some recap. I watched the condensed version on NFL, the Plus, which is they remove all the commercials and all the in-betweens of the plays. It's great. It's like 40 minutes.
Time.
And it's
saves time.
Yeah, it's every play. Yeah. So I watched that. That defense, man, that's got to be the biggest takeaway of this game. They rebounded from Monday night in a big way. And namely the guys we talked about, Johnny Mac. Jalen Carter was a wrecker in that game. They couldn't block him. They could not block. And every time he got to Derek Carr, he's looking at Derek Carr like, I'm coming for you. Derek Carr was seeing Jalen Carter in his sleep last night. But that defense is my biggest takeaway here on a Monday morning.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Carter, that's what I expected from week one. So that was why the biggest disappointment in his play, self-described. And again, it ain't me. It's what Jalen said, trash over the first 2 weeks. This is what the Eagles were expecting and what they need, to be honest, on a more consistent basis. And, this is the perfect example why I always say I'm not a stat guy. You look at the stats and it's like, whatever. But I encourage it. Baldy put up a good breakdown. He wrecked that game. He really did. That game. Didn't have one sack. He wrecked that game. Another perfect example, the interception by Reed Blankenship. That's not a sack. Turned into a pretty good pressure, turned into a pretty good play.
Yep.
Happens all the time in the NFL. Jalen Carter wrecked that game. They couldn't block him. Tremendous performance, best player on the field defensively. And when you can't block, it doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how gifted you are. It doesn't matter you're scoring 45.5 points a game. If you can't block people, you can't play offense. It's been true since day one, and it will continue. And they couldn't block Jalen Carter. A lot of other people had great games. Brandon Graham had a great game. Keeps playing well. Amazing story at his age. Zach Bond had a great game. In his return to New Orleans, you could see he was a little bit fired up. Reed Blankenship had a great game. A lot of guys played really, really well. But it all stems off the foundation of Jalen Carter.
No doubt. He was tremendous in that game, John, as you mentioned, just destroyed it. There was tons of play action passes, and that's where Derek Carr thrives, right? And Jalen Carter harried him up like there was no tomorrow and sped up his game clock, and that really threw Derek Carr off his game. A couple other guys that I thought had a good night, and then we're going to get to Bryce Huff. We got to get to him a little bit, man. I saw the snap counts that came out. Very low for Bryce Huff, to put it mildly, just 18 snaps for Bryce. But I do want to stay real quick on those Georgia guys. They got a lot of heat last week. I thought Jordan Davis showed up as well, Johnny Mac. He obviously registered a sack in the game, but even beside the sack, I thought Jordan Davis had a lot better of a game yesterday, made a much bigger impact on that defensive line. I liked what I saw from Jordan Davis.
Yeah, it's certainly better, and that's, it needed to be for basically everybody on defense, with the exception of a few. And Jordan's in that category as well. I didn't mention them. The first guys that I mentioned, those are the ones to me that really, really stood out. But anytime you get a sack, and that's what people want to see, and that's the example. Jordan Davis got a sack. Jalen Carter didn't get a sack, but Jalen Carter was the better player. Now, more impactful player. So, yeah, it was a positive step forward for Jordan Davis. But yesterday was Jalen Carter day from my perspective, and
Yeah,
everybody's
no
playing.
doubt about it. Yeah, Jalen Carter was a mean machine yesterday. We're going to get into the offense in a little bit. I want to welcome all of our great viewers in this morning on this Monday morning. An ugly win at times. That game was almost unbearable in certain moments when you had the blocked punt and it was still 3-0. That at times that game was very ugly, but you walk out of there with a win. And I think they learned a lot about themselves in a game like that. John, I had a viewer on last night, Abe. I think he's in the chat and on the post game show. And you talk about how Jalen Hurts is so relentless and he comes for 60 minutes, regardless of what he does. I think the whole team is taking on that persona in a way where they're relentless. And I thought they showed that yesterday with no points on the board, almost through the entire third quarter. And they come back and they win the game late in the game. Saquon Barkley with a big run. Dallas Goedert shows up in a huge way yesterday. Jalen Hurts, I called on him all week to rise up, Johnny Mack, without A.J. Brown. I thought he had a tremendous performance despite those 2 turnover plays. So, the team has become relentless. At least they were yesterday, and they got the win because of it. But just your thoughts on that and just how they keep coming.
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly true of Jalen. I'm not going to go that far with the offense as a whole just yet, because it's really difficult for people to have that sort of mentality that, despite making mistakes, to keep going and keep going and keep going. It's just rare. So I don't want to put everybody in the same category when it comes to Jalen Hurts and that specific trait. But it was nice to see him persevere with so many injuries coming in without AJ, obviously, and losing so many people during the game. And at the end, they won the game. Jalen Hurts went and won the game with the help of Dallas Goedert and obviously good route by Jahan Dotson to get Dallas Goedert free. And all the little things and Saquon Barkley finishing things. So a lot of help, but to be able to do that, to be able to go to the length of the field in that kind of circumstance, and there's no AJ Brown, there's no Devontae Smith, there's not even a Britton Covey, who's your third receiver coming into the game.
Physical game yesterday, man.
Yeah, very physical game. And the guys out there are Dotson and Paris Campbell, a practice squad player, Johnny Wilson, a raw rookie. And they were able to find a way to win the game. That's pretty impressive. And he got the big chunk play, which obviously helped. But hey, chunk plays count. So, but they still, if you're going to be honest, this is still not a good offense when AJ Brown's not on the field. That concerns me a little bit. I don't expect it to be the same. I think it's ridiculous to expect it to be the same. But I think you should be striving for a little bit more, and maybe if some of the over aggressiveness, or as most people would say, it's some of the aggressiveness worked. Maybe it does change, and maybe it does look better from that standpoint. But I still, AJ's got to get back on the field if there's going to be any consistency offensively.
Well, no, I mean, when you have a player of that caliber, but you're right. I mean, look, and I also will say, they had what, 25 or almost 30 plays in the Saints territory before they even had a point on the board. So I think some of they didn't play great, but boy, they had a lot of yards, Johnny Mack, without AJ Brown. They had 480 yards or something. Now, a lot of that was AJ. I think 330 of them came from Devontae.
And really, if you want to boil it down to 2 plays, 65 and 61.
Yeah, well, that's 125, but still, I mean, they had a lot of yards outside of those 2 plays. Now, those players both stepped up in a big way, but I thought the offense moved the ball well. My problem came with the amount of points they got on the board, and that's where I think Nick Sirianni was getting a lot of criticism. Now, on the postgame show, you defended Nick and just said, look, that's going to be their MO. They're aggressive. And I understand that point of view, but I do think that there is something to be said about, there's a difference between being aggressive and being smart in the moment, and I think every moment has a different feel and has a different, you know, there's a different type of game. It's a different situation. And I think Nick has sometimes dropped the ball on that just for the sake of saying, oh, I'm aggressive. I'm going to do it. I'm going to live and die on the aggressive hill, which is fine in some regard. But
well, that's an organizational philosophy, which I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to elevate this conversation because it bothers me. It
well,
literally,
yeah, and I
it
understand what you're saying. But
generally
don't you think there
bothers
should
me.
be more nuance, John? I mean, you're a
Well,
smart guy. You're an objective
I
guy.
said 4th and 1. See, people miss. I said, and you said I'll even push back on defending Nick Sirianni because I'm not defending Nick Sirianni because I don't give a shit about defending Nick Sirianni. The 4th and 1 with Saquon Barkley on the tush push, that to me was a terrible decision. But I gave the reason.
Right.
Like, what's the end game? If you get it, there's 14 seconds left. If you get it, you got to burn your timeout. There's going to be 10 seconds left. You got one shot at the end zone, probably they were at the 15. So you probably, let's say best case scenario, unless he breaks it, which is the best case scenario. But if he just chugs forward for the first down, which was the goal on that particular play, you're probably at the 12 or 13. You got one shot in the end zone. Is that worth it? Is that worth? I don't think so. So I think that's a bad decision. That's not defending Nick Sirianni. I'm talking about the philosophy as a whole. And here's how I describe it. The day anybody says to me when it's successful and they either go on and score a touchdown or even a field goal, if they continue a drive, if they would have had to punt and it turns into a field goal. So in other words, when it's successful and it generates points, if anybody, the first person comes to me and says, yeah, you know what, but that was a bad decision. Because long-term, if you keep making that decision, it's going to hurt you. If one person ever says that, I will listen to them and I will say, man, yeah, make an argument. But this nonsense of everybody, if it's successful, nobody gives a shit. And that's my whole point, that the aggression of this organization as a whole, and this dates back before Nick Sirianni because it's an organizational philosophy. It has been tremendously successful. So to just nitpick it in the moment is what I'm saying. If you got a reason, like I just gave you a reason why that 4th and 1 was a bad decision. If you got a reason on an individual, I'll listen to you all day. If you're just talking about the results of a play, I don't want to hear about it. You're just talking about, oh, I would have loved it if it was successful, but I don't like it because it wasn't successful. That's my issue. That's my issue.
Well, look,
I'm not defending anybody. I'm not defending the head coach. And as I said, it harkens back before the head coach. But if I can get one person when they score a touchdown and comes back to me and says, yeah, but you know what? If they do that a bunch of times, that's going to hurt them long term. I'll start listening. Until I get that person, it's all bullshit. Everybody's talking about results. I'm not picking on you, Zander. Everybody's talking about results. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, but I mean, I think to your point, you're in an away game. You're playing the number one offense in the league. Your defense is playing lights out. I mean, is that not a situation where forget the results of the individual play?
But nobody's forgetting that. That's all they're talking. That's all they want because if it's successful, it's great. Can't be either it's a good decision or a bad decision. Again, good decisions don't guarantee good outcomes. Bad decisions don't guarantee bad outcomes. So if you're saying it's a bad decision, what you're saying is long-term, that's going to hurt the Philadelphia Eagles. Long-term, because if you keep making bad decisions, the odds increase that you're going to get bad results. And if you keep making now the league as a whole, literally, and again, forget about Nick Sirianni because there's this hate of Nick Sirianni now, whatever you want to call it. This harkens back to Doug Peterson and that era, and it was a huge advantage for the Philadelphia Eagles to the point they won the only Super Bowl championship. Checks my notes and franchise history. Everybody loved it. The entire league, it was so successful, has gotten more aggressive. The Eagles were on the ground floor of that. On the ground floor of that, to the point that now it's not as big as an advantage because everybody's doing it. And Detroit is doing it even better to the point that they get to the NFC Championship game last year. But this relying on results and saying this is a good decision because it worked, this is a bad decision because it didn't work. I'm sorry. That I'm trying to elevate things. Like I said, that's like lowest common denominator stuff. Lowest common denominator. If you want to look at a particular play like that 4th and 1, and I gave you why I thought it was a bad decision, give me the reasons why. Don't tell me because it didn't work. I know it didn't work. You think if Nick Sirianni could predict if something worked and didn't work, you think if he knew it was not going to work, he'd say, let's do it anyway? It makes no sense.
Well, you talked about them being on the forefront of being aggressive. I mean, it seems as though the pendulum has swung a little bit, and that's where, forget the results. I'm not even talking about the results because I understand what you're saying. That's what people are criticizing as a whole across, Eagle Nation in a way. But don't you have to, like I said, don't you have to analyze the situation and decide whether I'm going to be, I don't have AJ Brown. I have 0 points on the board. And that's just one at the end of the half. But as a whole, right, I'm not going to come into this game and be aggressive in this moment like I was in Super Bowl 52 to try and win the game. It's a different moment. It's a different situation. And that's what I'm getting at. I think they're just being aggressive because that's their MO. And at times it's hurting them and they're not able to look at the situation objectively and say, this isn't the time to be aggressive.
Well, they have a hubris about the team. I mean, you saw it again at the coin toss. Like, this is a game on paper. They should have said, you know what? We're not equipped. Didn't turn out that way. But they should have said, we're not equipped to battle this team if it does turn into a shootout. As Jim Schwartz would have, every game has a personality. Didn't turn into that. Obviously, the defense has played much better than everyone expected, certainly the Eagles defense. So every game has a personality. But when you look at it, and I look at Antonio Pierce earlier this season when he's got the ball on the plus 44, 4th and 1, losing the game, 5 minutes left, and he decides to punt the football. He never gets the football back. That's a bad decision. He might have failed, but that would have been a good decision. Giving it away and saying, hey, it's 1975, I'll get it back because I'm a defensive guy. I don't think anybody will like that really quickly. And when you say teams are catching up because they're being aggressive. So the advantage, everybody goes now for the bet. But now it's, if you're plus side, if you're 40 in and it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, it is uncommon to not go. Now, some might, because of the long field goals and guys are getting better. Some people,
I think the field goals are becoming more valuable. I'd have to look exactly, but I believe scoring in the NFL is down in a big way.
It is. It's down in a really big way. And field goal kickers are having an historic start to the season.
Yeah, we wouldn't know that because Jake Elliott doesn't get many chances.
No, and he did get the 60-yarder, didn't come close. That was a little bit disappointing considering. But, now 60-yarders should be ridiculous. Unfortunately, it no longer is. And I don't know what's going on with.
I think Dallas hit a 65-yarder.
Oh, that kid is unbelievable. I don't know,
insane, dude.
You always see on social media players who score touchdowns and they get the urine test the next day. They should be testing these kickers. I don't know what's going on with these guys. But it's been very impressive. And ironically, the only one who can't make kicks is Justin Tucker, long range, and Jake Elliott, the 2 All-Pros. It's been crazy, the kickers early in this season. But Yeah, I mean, I just think it's like if you got a problem with a particular play, bring up the particular play and tell me when it was why it was wrong, and I'll listen. But the overriding philosophy, like I said, the day somebody comes to me when they score and they say, "Yeah, but you know what? That's a bad decision long term. It's going to hurt the Philadelphia Eagles if they keep making that type of decision." Then I'll pay more attention. Otherwise, it's just results.
Yeah, I get it. I'd like to see a little bit more flexibility on the approach. I think that's my point, but I understand. John, real quick, I want to get your thoughts. We're going to get Jeff Kerr up in a second. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Hit that like button. A couple super chats I want to run through before we hit the break. But, John, before I do that, Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley, man, they put the team on their back yesterday. Really, Dallas Goedert, I thought, had a huge game. I mean, he had catches in critical moments, including obviously the 61-yarder that took him all the way down to set up the game-winning touchdown. Just, Dallas Goedert, man, is he as good as he was yesterday? And should the Eagles be getting him more involved in the game plan? That was a tremendous game from him.
Well, I don't think you're going to see 10 for 170 too
Oh yeah,
often.
that was
You
a
got to
career
go
game
back
for
to
him. I think that was the highest in his
you got to
career.
go back to Pete Retzlaff in Eagles history to get numbers like that. So obviously, but one of the disappointing things against Atlanta was that they weren't able to get Dallas Goedert involved in that particular game, and I do think that the timing of the AJ Brown injury hurt because they couldn't game plan to get him more involved. I thought he'd be more involved. He was more involved. It makes sense why he was more involved. I didn't expect him to get 10 and 170. And remember, even if you take out the 61 yarders, still over 100 yards. So that's a very big day for a tight end in the NFL. He's a great player. He's been a great player for a long time. Eagles got a ton of playmakers. So, certain guys are going to get overlooked, and he's gotten overlooked. But you see when he's given opportunities that he can make plays.
Good stuff. By the way, I want to remind everybody, speaking of Saquon Barkley there, giving away a jersey this week, everybody. He eclipsed the 125 mark in a big way.
Almost did it on one play.
I know, man. He had a huge game yesterday, especially with that big 65-yard run to the house. John, we talk about how, has he lost any of it? Is he have too much tread on the tires? He exploded on that play, John. The secondary he got to the second level and ran away from defensive backs relatively easily. They had no chance to catch him. That was a tremendous play to watch. I thought Saquon really showed that he has a lot left in the tank on that run. We'll see how he holds up, obviously, across the full season. But a great play there from Saquon Barkley. So get your memberships in, everybody. We'll be giving away the Saquon Barkley jersey on the raffle. The same way I did it last week. I still got the same thing up. I insert everybody's name into the raffle. I do it live on air so you guys see full transparency. So get your memberships in if you want to try and win the Saquon Barkley jersey. Let me run through these super chats. Johnny Mac, real quick. Appreciate everybody for giving it. Demaria Smith says, just my opinion, it kind of feels like Sirianni is trying to force himself into these games by going for it on fourth down as often as he has been. Johnny Mac, quick response to Demaria.
The organization hasn't been doing it since 2017 as a philosophy. I might agree. They've been doing it. It's just been successful. So nobody cares when it's successful. It's been one of the biggest advantages this team has had to be aggressive. Basically, if they're plus 40 and it's 4th and 3, even 4th and 4, they're probably going to go for it. And it's been a huge advantage to the point that I think they've taken it too far, to be honest. But again, that's a different discussion. It's been a huge advantage for the team, and it's been going on for a long time. And I don't know why people don't see that, because the entire league has changed because of what the Philadelphia Eagles did in 2017. The entire NFL. And that's before Nick ever set foot in Philadelphia.
Let's go to our next super chat from Martine. Martine, thank you, man. And Demaria, thank you for your super chat as well. Appreciate all you guys for supporting the show. Martine says, good morning, Zander and John. Any update on Slay and Devontae? I think both plays were dirty and both Saints players should be fined. Just two unnecessary actions. Martine, I would agree with you on that last part, especially in the case of the Slay thing. I thought Trevor Penning, John, I thought he was going to leave the Caesar Superdome with Darius Slay.
Yeah, I thought the Penning on Slay was dirty. The other one's bang bang. I know you got to blow the whistle earlier. You got to do something. Defensive linemen are taught to track back and hustle and get in the play, and the guy's trying to make a play, and it was a bad hit.
Yeah, but did you see number 98 who, like, the play was actually then clearly dead after the defensive lineman rocked Devontae, his helmet was off, and 98 looks at him and just goes, boom, and just jumps on top of him. And then when he gets up, there's a video floating around of him spitting on Devontae. And I think that's where people are like,
well, if somebody spit, and I didn't see that, but if somebody is spitting on someone, yeah, they should get fined. They should get suspended, actually. Yeah. But I'm talking about the play. I'm talking about the actual play. The Slay tweeted, though, injury-wise, Slay tweeted he's fine. So that's positive. Smith is going to be in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, I'm worried.
Same with Lane Johnson. So that's out of the Eagles' hands. That's, independent neurologists and things like that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get the update on them later in the week. And our team, when they get back to the facility, probably flew home last night, right, John? Right out of
they both flew home. So
yeah, so they should be. We'll get the update on them later in the week. Nick Marchetti checks in. Will AJ and Smitty both play this week? Nick, we don't know yet. We will get the update on for both of those guys later in the week, as I just mentioned. John,
out of their hands. Their hands. Independent neurologists have to clear them through the.
Well, not for AJ, but for Smitty, yeah.
No, no, for Lane and Smitty. They're both in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, I'm worried about Lane when you talk about, puking, and I thought he had a sickness and
he's got more of a history. I think he's had three documented concussions. So this will be his fourth. It's either his second going on 3 or third going on 4th. I'll double check, but he's got more of a history. So probably going to be tougher, I would say, for him to get through the protocol than DeMonte, but that's just a pure guess. I'm not a neurologist. Jeff Kerr might be. We got to get to Jeff Kerr.
Yeah, we're going to get to Jeff. I want to read one more super chat. Well, I'll skip the break and bring up Jeff here. I think us not kicking field goals is messing with Jake Elliott's confidence. We got to get him going because we will need him. It's actually a fair point. I mean,
I like that point. See, that's a point I like. Yeah. I think he's right.
I mean, he came in.
Never gets an opportunity. That was not Jake Elliott, man. Even though, like, again, because so many long kicks and so many guys have been successful, it's become, oh, you should make this. That's a really difficult kick, but he wasn't even close. I think there's something to that. Guy's got no work, Yeah.
Speaking of it, Abe says Cowboys kicker Aubrey should be paid that $60 million. Yeah, Cowboys lose yesterday. Niners lose yesterday. Good day for the Eagles. If you can, look at it from a whole.
What's awesome about Aubrey, he didn't even play football at Notre Dame. He was a soccer player.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Well, that's why he's got such a damn big leg. Let me give you a quick update on our sponsor, BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa, everybody. They are the #1 sports book right now to bet on this football team and really all sports in general. So go to betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they've launched a new promo for our YouTube people. You can see it here on the screen. Use the code YouTube150 and you get 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and then 125% on your second and third deposit. So you can deposit less and bet with more on BetUS. So go to betus.com.pa. Let's go to our man, Jeff Kerr. I see him in the green room. It's an overreaction Monday, and that